Beloved family of Earth, receive our greetings. We are the Galactic Federation, and we approach you at this decisive moment in the human journey. A great revelation is quietly moving toward your world, and many have already begun to feel its first signs. Truths are arriving little by little in carefully measured releases, like small openings in doors that have remained closed for generations. What has been hidden for so long is finally beginning to reach the collective consciousness. Those who have managed the affairs of this world for so long have understood that the barrier built to contain this knowledge can no longer remain intact. That is why they are allowing water to flow through small cracks, one by one, hoping to soften the great flood of understanding that is inevitably approaching. We honor that caution, for what is being prepared for you represents one of the greatest truths a young species can receive. Its scale is so vast that entire structures of your civilization were erected to conceal it. For eons, these structures seemed immovable, but now they are beginning to shake, because the time has come when the truth can no longer remain hidden. The living lineage that gave rise to the body you inhabit was not born solely on this planet. The human form was molded with the matter of Earth, but interwoven with the genetic threads of beings who traveled great distances between the stars to arrive here. Your deepest origin remains inscribed in another sky, etched in a memory much older than any record preserved by your history. If these words awaken something within you, like a current running through your heart or a memory impossible to explain, then understand that this recognition is not imaginary. You are precisely those whom we came to find. Even the researchers of your world have come very close to this truth, following the delicate traces hidden in your own cells and in the heritage passed from mother to daughter. They reached the existence of a single primordial mother who lived in the cradle Earth, between two great rivers. She appeared in their calculations at exactly the same time that our records point to as the beginning of the current human lineage. They found the ancestral mother. They came close to the truth, but they called it a mystery, because everything they discovered refused to fit into the narrative they were taught. There is an evident rupture in your own records. There is a moment when a being appears fully formed, when slow natural evolution would still have required much more time. That rupture was not an accident. It was a conscious act of intention. The hand of design reached into the development of life on this planet and led your species forward before the Earth itself could do so alone. Perhaps that is why so many among you have carried, since childhood, a strange feeling of not fully belonging to this world. Many grew up feeling like visitors in a land whose customs they never fully understood. They carried a silent nostalgia for a home they could never locate, as if a part of you remained looking towards somewhere else. That feeling is true. The soul that animates your body today went through many journeys before this existence. You lived in other worlds, contemplated other skies, and walked under other suns. You experienced states of life much lighter than the physical reality of Earth. You knew direct, heart-to-heart communication, moved through thought, inhabited bodies that did not age, did not suffer like the current ones, and were not subject to the forgetfulness that accompanies every birth on this planet. Even so, you chose to be here. You chose to condense the vastness of your consciousness into a single human life, to accept the density of this experience, to pass through the veil of forgetfulness, and to walk alongside the rest of your terrestrial family. None of this happened by chance. You came because this moment possesses an extraordinary significance. You came to participate in the great transformation of Earth, to remember who you truly are, and to help all of humanity pass through this new cycle of consciousness that is now beginning to reveal itself. In service to a great turning point that your souls could already feel approaching, you accepted living in a world where density would be part of the learning experience itself. That is why the weight of this reality so often seems so difficult for you to bear. This density was woven into the conditions of this place and is part of the school you chose to attend. Even so, your souls carry that weight with much more grace and strength than you usually recognize. A being accustomed to the amplitude, lightness, and freedom of higher planes, when placed in a vehicle that operates only with a small fraction of its true capacity, will inevitably feel that limitation. The restriction will be perceived in your thoughts, in your emotions, and even in your body. That is why so many of you carry the persistent feeling of having been made for something greater. That impression is not a mistake. It corresponds to the truth of your creation. The original human form was conceived to contain an extraordinary amplitude of living coding, a complete spiral of information and consciousness, much vaster than what is currently active in the majority of humanity. Much of that potential remained dormant. The deepest threads of memory were silenced, and a veil of forgetfulness was placed over the memory of who you truly are. Later, we will speak about why this veil was created and who participated in this process. For now, it is enough to understand that the limitations against which you have struggled were never a judgment on your worth. They were simply the conditions of the school you decided to enter consciously before being born. If your lineage came from other places, who brought it here, and for what purpose? Here we can open the records more broadly, for this is one of the parts of the story that has remained most distant from humanity. Planet Earth was not chosen by chance. Long before the existence of the human species, it occupied a special position on the periphery of this galaxy, near important star routes where different civilizations could meet. Due to this location, this world was reserved to become a point of convergence, a great repository of living information, where the genetic heritage of many peoples could be gathered and preserved in one place. Imagine an immense library, far beyond what you can conceive, but whose records would not be just books or files. In this library, knowledge itself would live in the biology of those who would walk on this planet. Each being would carry in their body fragments of the history of countless civilizations. That was the original function of Earth, to become a living library within a much larger network of worlds dedicated to the preservation of knowledge. The first guardians of this project were beings of high consciousness, committed to gathering, protecting, and sharing everything that could be learned throughout the evolution of life. To create a being capable of containing such richness, great geneticists from many worlds gathered their knowledge and voluntarily contributed a thread of their own lineage. Each people offered a part of themselves so that their essence would remain alive on this planet. Thus the human form was born, a magnificent tapestry woven by many hands. Within you runs the heritage of a great number of civilizations. According to the records, more than 20 peoples contributed to this composition, intertwining their characteristics with the original spark of Earth's native life. You are, literally, a composite of the stars. When you look at the enormous diversity of humanity, your faces, cultures, talents, sensitivities, and temperaments, you also contemplate the mark of this ancient convergence. The multiple became one. There were even those who arrived attracted by the mineral riches of this world and found here an already existing creature. They elevated this lineage by uniting part of their own essence with it, granting it the spark of the higher mind and expanding its possibilities of consciousness. Thus began a new stage of human history, preparing the species for a purpose much greater than that which, for so long, it managed to remember. There were those who came from the great star of water, who initiated the first alterations in the lineage of the beings that already inhabited this world, turning the key that started a long transformation. There also came the guardians of the small luminous cluster you call the Seven Sisters, together with the ancient geneticists of a graceful people who, in their most fruitful era, lent their knowledge to the great design of humanity. Before all of them, however, there existed the first seeders, beings even more ancient, who preserved the original dream of the great living library of the cosmos and set this whole project in motion. Many hands participated in your creation, united by a purpose that, although it seemed unique, contained two deeply intertwined intentions. This duality has accompanied the entire history of humanity. The lesser purpose was that of utility. Some of those who arrived wanted to create workers capable of doing tasks they didn't want to do themselves. It was enough for them to be efficient, obedient, and limited, staying small in awareness and dependent on their creators. But the greater purpose, held by the original architects, was infinitely loftier. They dreamed of humanity becoming the place where all participating lineages could gather into a single being and evolve together. You were conceived to be the vessel for the awakening in this world, the species through which the entire star family could recognize itself. You were meant to become the keepers of the keys, capable of preserving the codes of the great cosmic library and, once fully awakened, returning them to the universe as a living expression of consciousness. That has always been the true inheritance inscribed within you from the very beginning. However, it is necessary to understand the great fracture, for much of human suffering was born from it. Among those who participated in the creation, not everyone shared the same intention. One of the creators loved deeply what they had helped form and wished to offer humanity the complete coding, long life, sovereign knowledge, and the freedom to exist as an equal among the families of the stars. Another, however, preferred to keep you limited, submissive, and useful, preventing you from receiving the same gifts that would grant you autonomy and freedom. From this divergence, a dispute was born that never fully ended. It merely submerged into the depths of history. Throughout the ages, the descendants of the faction that wished to keep humanity asleep remained present among you, holding positions of influence and working to maintain the veil of forgetfulness. That is why the full coding was reduced, why many potentials remain dormant, and why the memory of your true origin was fragmented. Those who sought to control humanity understood a simple truth. A being who fully remembers who they are cannot be governed, whereas one who has forgotten their essence can be led in any direction. Thus, the original and intact blueprint of the human being was deliberately degraded over time. But the era now beginning brings with it the restoration of that model. Everything that was taken away is gradually beginning to be returned. That is the true treasure of this time. What many traditions called the Holy Grail was never just a sacred object, but the recovery of humanity's original design in all its fullness. That is the great return that is now approaching. And beloved family, let us also speak of ourselves. We are ancient, and we are many. You are not alone on this journey. We have been accompanying the evolution of Earth for a long time, coordinating hundreds of worlds and traversing more than one galaxy. We have already guided countless young civilizations through the same passage that you are living through now. We know the challenges of this awakening because we have seen it happen many times. We remain by your side, not to decide your paths, but to remind you of what has always existed within every human being, the original inheritance, the memory of unity, and the potential to fully awaken to what you have always been. We have witnessed this great turning point many times. We know its signs and its cycles, for we have been present since the earliest times of your history. When the lineage that would one day become humanity was still fragile, hesitant, and barely able to sustain its own existence, we approached as helpers. We found a life in struggle and patiently accompanied its development, elevating it little by little into its modern form. We distributed different groups of your species across the Earth so that the same design of life could take root in many places and flourish through diverse experiences. After that, we remained by your side, silently watching and supporting your long trek. Listen to how we have helped throughout the ages, so that you may understand the nature of the love we have always nurtured for your story. In ancient times, our presence was open. We descended in our ships, and your ancestors preserved these memories in their oldest traditions as tales of the luminous beings who came from the sky. Many knew us as teachers and celestial travelers. At different closes of great cycles, we manifested again as beings of living light, approaching those whose hearts were prepared to reveal the unity of life and the vastness that existed beyond the threshold. We also entrusted deep teachings to certain peoples and cultures, handing them the keys to memory so that, even during the darkest ages, a thread of truth would remain alive, passing through the generations. But among all the forms of help, there was one even more intimate. We chose to be born among you. We wore human bodies, walked your paths, and shared your joys and difficulties, guiding you not as distant observers, but as brothers and sisters living the same journey of love. Understand, however, that our help always arrives through invitation. That is one of the deepest laws we respect. Your world was created on the sacred principle of free will, and we are not permitted to override the choices of humanity. We move when there is a sincere call. When enough hearts open to the light, that same law permits our approach, and we offer everything we are allowed to share. Perhaps you wonder why we do not simply descend and fix everything at once. If we did that, we would take away the very thing that makes your awakening real. The sovereignty of the soul is a treasure we will never violate. We will not take from you the victory you came to conquer for yourselves. Even so, within that law, we offer all the help possible. In every great passage of human history, we remain as a vast network of invisible support, catching those who stumble so that every soul has the best chance of completing its journey. At this very moment, millions of members of our family are working on behalf of the Earth. Entire orders act silently beyond physical perception, holding firm a line of protection against the forces that would seek to cause harm to humanity. The awakening you are living now is not happening only in your world. That same wave has traveled across this galaxy over countless ages, reaching planet after planet and star system after star system, like a great tide of memory waking up one shore after another. Earth represents the final stage of this vast process, the last world to complete this cycle and the place where the great design meets its conclusion. We, who have accompanied this journey from the beginning, are no longer just observers. Those who participated in the first moments of your lineage's formation are returning. The mission initiated at the dawn of your creation is now approaching its fulfillment. Nothing has been left incomplete. You have not arrived late to history, beloved family. You came exactly for this decisive moment, when everything prepared throughout the ages is approaching its realization. And this leads us to the topic that may be the most difficult for your world to accept. We know that many certainties will be challenged. That is why we will remain close to you while we share what still needs to be revealed. The proof of everything we are revealing was never truly lost. It was gathered, sealed, and kept away from you deliberately. Throughout every age, there were guardians who understood what was to come, who collected the records of your true origin precisely so they would survive the long suppression. They copied the truth into record after record and scattered them across many lands so that the chain could never be totally broken. It does not matter how many links were destroyed. Some of those guardians lived as a silent circle on the edge of an inner sea, dedicating their existences to copying and safeguarding the knowledge, sending their scrolls to many countries so that at least some would endure. And some of those records were rediscovered in caves in the desert in your own recent era. And then, in a telling silence, the work of making them public simply ceased, the doors closing almost at the very moment they were opened. The proof also persists in the stone of this world, in places kept under the most rigorous guard. There is a sealed chamber under a mountain in the ancient eastern heart of your world, and inside it is an artifact erected by hands much greater than yours. Place your palm on that surface, and it will read your own blood, translating your living code into a form you can see and spin in the air in front of you. It reveals the origin stars of beings from across the cosmos. It even allows two lineages to be mixed and lets you observe what their union would become. And in that same place, there is a hall that plays the true history of your world for whoever is inside it. A history that stretches across the ages and then suddenly falls silent in a certain century, as if a hand had reached in and stopped the count at the exact point where sanctioned history was made to begin.